long day, I got a lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Msgr Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Kauth.
And we are speaking from the rooftop.
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know
So I've been sitting here waiting for Father Kauth to be done with his phone. I think he's playing Candy Crush or something. I have no idea, but he finally just put it down.
I've got visitors here that are asking when I'm going to. Anyway.
No, I think I'm going with the Candy Crush theory.
Oh yeah, Candy. I've never actually played Candy Crush.
Is that right? It's
No,
addictive.
never. No.
It actually, there's something mindless about it that can either be almost therapeutic because your mind is racing about something and it just needs to get off of it, and it's a way to, it's like an off ramp, or it can be numbing to the mind.
Yeah.
To a point that it could be detrimental. It's mind numbing.
Honestly, I forbid any kind of video games at the seminary.
Well, it's good.
And so, honestly, it's just a matter of my own pride that I don't do it, because I'm like, if they catch me.
Well,
because the one thing I love, your predecessor played Angry Birds.
Yes.
And I had played that one time with him. And I thought that was really fun.
It is kind of fun. Well, I find the phone screens to be too small for that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's all a little much.
It's not a temptation.
But I do like the Mario Karts.
When you're with your nieces and nephews. Yeah.
That's kind of fun. And then they have this like Nintendo Golf. So you wouldn't believe how good of a golfer I am.
I bet you are. Yeah, I bet you are.
When I can swing a club with a thumb, I mean, I should be on, in the pro tour. But all right, so let's talk about something a little more substantial than games.
Well, last time we spoke a lot about discouragement, the possible sliding into despair, and the beauty of fortitude and hope.
So let's talk about some of the practical pitfalls on the topic of faith. So, all right, I'll pitch it first.
Sure.
Faith is never not faith.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that sounds a little redundant. However, let me flesh it out. So sometimes you talk with people and they say, well, I believe, and therefore this is so, because I believe this to be so. Okay. And that's great when it comes to the ascent of faith and receiving appropriately those things that are taught with magisterial authority. Excellent. However, there comes a time when we live our faith and we become frustrated because it doesn't seem as if the road or the path that we're walking down is as firm as the ground that everyone else is walking on in living walking a journey of faith. And one begins to doubt, well, do I really believe this? Because I'm feeling as though the ground that I'm walking on isn't terribly firm, that the ground of faith that I'm trying to traverse doesn't feel as strong as I would profess it to be. And consequently, is there something wrong with my faith?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that is no, faith is never not faith. There is a difference between the type of certainty you have with calculable data, 2 + 2 = 4, There's a different type of certainty that comes, or at least an experience of certainty that comes with that, than when it comes with assertions of faith that you walk on in life. It may not feel as firm as 2 + 2 = 4. However, it is firm, but in a different way, and it is known to us by faith.
Yeah.
Now, does that sound too esoteric, or are you
No. I'm tracking.
Okay.
Do you want me to put it into
Thomistic terms?
mystic terms?
Yes,
That's typically my MO for
it's your
you.
lane.
Well, because this goes back to the very beginning of our friendship.
That's true.
Not that I knew anything about Thomas back then, but you would say something, and in large part because of your experience, and try to give voice to the experience that you had.
Mhm.
And I would read something.
Right. And
It's almost like I had no experiences. I would read something and try to match that to what you're saying.
that's true. That's kind of the yin and the yang. Of
Yeah,
our
you're very
conversations.
much more experiential that way. I think that, so St. Thomas would say that ironically, the truths of the faith are more certain than empirical knowledge, simply because we're fallible and we might get our instrumentation wrong, or what have you,
Mhm.
but never discounting exactly what you're saying. So
Because the experience.
the actual
Yeah.
word of God, revelation, is most certain because of the one
Right.
from whom it comes. But when we have an act of faith, and it's something we can all forget, and what you're saying to some degree, that it's never not faith, if you put it onto a human terms, because we have human faith too, right? We live by that. Sometimes we can call it opinion, where we weigh on one side, and I choose. I don't see it perfectly,
Right.
but I choose to believe it.
Right.
And principally, if you take it past just opinion about something, but I'm choosing to believe someone. So in all of our relationships, depending upon what we're staking on the person, you have to choose to believe them, because you can't see everything. And so if you tell me, for example, about something in your childhood, I don't see that, I don't know that, but I have a relationship with you over a long course of time, and I know that you're not telling the truth. I mean, I believe you. I believe you because I also know you in such a way that I've seen, and now maybe the audience knows you to some degree too, that certain things in your life leave such strong impressions that you can never ever discount them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just markers for you.
Right.
Changes in your character, changes in your life. Like this was
consequential.
really consequential and a kind of a milestone.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to recount for me something about your childhood that I can't see, I have no reason not to believe you, but I don't see it.
Right.
And so to see what you see and to hold on to what you're holding on to, I can only do it through you, your testimony. And that requires an act of the will, not just the intellect. And that's
Right.
the problem for faith, is that every act of faith, you might present me with something, that God is 3 persons in one nature, that God
Right.
is, that the Son of God who became man and is hypostatically united to his human nature, etc., that they're not confused or changed. You can present me with all of the revelation, and I don't see it. And yet because of the one who is giving it to me, I believe it, because truth himself speaks truly. But I can't, but even if I just find, like you've done RCIA before.
Yeah.
Or they call it something different now.
OCIA now.
OCIA. And so when you're bringing people into the church, you will have those people that find the truths of the faith to be compelling, but they don't yet have faith.
Yeah.
They're sort of convinced by the logic of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's reasonable enough, but it's still kind of the level of opinion, because what true faith is, supernatural faith, not like my faith in your talking about your history, your past, things you've seen, things you've known, where I believe you. In what the church teaches about actual faith is that since it requires an act of the will to move the intellect to firmly adhere to a truth revealed, that act of the will needs help. And we get the help that comes from grace, that I can make an act of faith, which is a human act, but it's also a divine act. And that's why you say it's never not faith. Like I actually have to make an act of the will
Yes.
to believe it.
That's where you made the most sense.
Okay.
No, everything has made sense perfectly.
Yeah.
But that's what all come together.
It is. And
We
you
say it's the
feel that
two-
it's my will's involved.
Yes.
And so you can have that little nagging thing around the corner and saying, I'm just willing to believe this.
Right.
You are indeed.
Right.
And you're also being helped by God to believe it.
So it's an analogy, and I think you and I have spoken about it in the past, but it's going to a circus, it's sitting in the stands, and someone's saying to you, hey, do you believe that guy can carry that girl on his back across that tightrope 50 feet in the air?
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, they're advertising it. They're not going to say they can do it. They wouldn't be a good business model if these people fell to their death every night, or some people fell to their death every night. So it's like, yeah, of course I believe that. Okay. Now, are you willing to replace the girl and to go on his back, to go across?
How much do you believe it?
Yeah, that's a very different thing. So now my will, it's an analogy, but now,
as I said, what's at
flesh in the
stake?
game.
What's at stake?
Exactly. I got flesh.
And if eternal life's at stake.
Yes. And the whole thing starts to be a little different than me believing that she can go on his back and come across.
Because it costs me nothing.
Exactly.
This was a line, that's a great analogy. I think you probably have heard the one from C.S. Lewis about the rope in his shed.
Mm-mm.
Like I might go buy a rope, and when I buy a rope, like we took some trees down. We're always taking trees down here because they're breaking, falling, whatever else, storms.
Mm-hmm.
And one just got stuck and it was huge. And so I went and got some rope.
It's so handy.
I just love rope. I got so much rope around here now. But I got this rope and I didn't check the tensile strength on the thing.
Oh no.
And I hook it up to the gator. I'm trying to pull this tree out of the top of the trees to come down, right? Just to be safe and be away from it. Because we could have gone and cut it, whatever else. But, I got guys right here.
Yeah, it's too much fun to get rope and
exactly,
use your gator.
It was fun. What I didn't think about was what would happen with the rope if it broke and I got all this stretching tension on it and it snaps back and destroys your head.
Yeah, what's going to hit?
But to get away from my storytelling and the actual analogy, that C.S. Lewis says you might buy a rope that the owner of the store tells you can hold 500 pounds. And you might perfectly believe that so long as it's in the shed. But when you have to hang from it, you're checking that rope. You're asking that.
A little more at stake.
It's a lot more at stake.
A lot more at stake.
And that's just true.
And this is really people living their faith every single day. And when they're making choices that are consequential in their life, that sometimes make things a little more difficult or more challenging, and oftentimes more beautiful and inspiring. This is that walk of faith. This is that journey of faith. Making decisions at work, about your profession, about your livelihood, about the livelihood that you provide for your family. All of these things are substantial, consequential. And granted, this is not the proper object of faith per se, in the sense that we're not talking about what has been revealed by God in those circumstances. But I am trying to apply what I know
about
has been
God
revealed
and
by
His
God.
care and providence.
And how I'm supposed to live in these circumstances and apply it. And it always feels like the ground is slightly moving under your feet, a little less firm. And I talk about that as a way of saying faith is never not faith. It's not going to have the feeling that you want it to have. And it really kind of goes to what you've just described beautifully and intellectually about the element of the will that's involved. But I like to look at the image in Scripture, particularly in the Gospel, where our Lord asks Peter to step out of the boat.
Yeah.
And for a moment, he's standing on water.
Yeah.
And then he begins to sink. He begins to flounder.
Right.
And so I see that is a very good analogy for walking the life of faith. It's like walking on water.
It is. Because you
when
can't
you're
do it.
completely ascending, it's
And it's a supernatural act.
It's exactly.
You can't do that.
It's exactly. And it's totally firm, firmer than the ground, than the land itself.
Yeah.
Until
you don't will it.
You start to waver. And then it starts to flounder. And it does not feel as firm as you want it to feel.
Yeah.
And so it becomes, I think, a very apt and obviously
Absolutely.
revealed in the Gospels as such
Sure.
a metaphor for faith. It's a bit like walking on water. And so when I think about the journey of faith and when I talk to people about the journey of faith, I'm more inclined to talk about it as walking on water in that sense, because it does bring the element of that divine and supernatural grace, but also we need to cooperate with it. Otherwise, we're going to feel like we're sinking.
Yeah, absolutely. I typically use that passage when talking to the young men about vocations, because you were asking if you can step out and do something that is beyond your nature. It's beyond your capacity. And there was recently, our friend Father McCarthy was here not too terribly long ago, and he was giving a homily to the sisters, and he was having mass, a small, just quiet, private mass.
Yeah.
And so I served it just because it's fun to be an altar boy again.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave a really beautiful homily on that passage. And he just mentioned something I had never considered before, which was Peter didn't try to swim. Peter didn't go back to the boat. He didn't go to land. Presumably the guy can swim.
Right, of course, he was a fisherman, yeah.
And so he didn't have recourse to the areas where he found safety. And I thought that was a brilliant insight.
He reached out.
Because that's what we can do. Like at the moment that our will is tired of making the act of the will, or we're getting scared, or we don't believe in divine providence and life is too difficult, I could just, instead of asking the Lord to save me, I could just retreat.
Right.
To things that I did in my life before that were safe.
To what I know.
That
will keep me afloat.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
And he didn't.
Yeah.
And in that sense, it's really meritorious. I know.
Where did that come from?
I don't know.
It was a particular grace, clearly.
It was a particular grace. No, it was a really brilliant idea.
No, it's grace and his wonderful mind.
Yeah, he's got a great mind. He's a great guy.
Well, wonderful. All right, so...
Which means Father Gober's going to be mad at us because we praised McCarthy and we trashed Gober.
He should be used to it by now.
That's true. That's true enough. True.
Always our Mac.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go,
I have to say I need help.
I would agree.
You oftentimes are breaking out of the particular box of things you have created in the kitchen before. And I am in an absolute rut when it comes to Fridays.
Oh, no.
Because like I can make, as you know, I make pasta is sort of my thing. I love Italian cooking, and I have probably a repertoire of 100 sauces. But you don't always want pasta.
No, you don't.
And I love salmon, but I get tired of salmon. Fish tacos are great, but it's
it's a rut.
It's a Friday, it's like I cycle around about 7 or 8 different possibilities if you don't want pasta.
Do you do pizzas?
We do pizza. We have a pizza oven here, so we do pizzas.
So
that's a great one.
It's a great.
That's a great one. But have you discovered because you were always doing something different with what you're eating, what you're, I'm off this now, or I'm on this now. You must have been some like sort of vegan-esque mode at some point and said, well, this is a great substitute and it's really, really tasty.
Okay. Well, all right. Basically vegan is living the Eastern Orthodox, or the Eastern fast. Right. That's not
so
fun.
No dairy.
That's
no
a
meat.
challenge. And
let's not go that severe.
I would only do that as a fast.
Okay, let's not.
I would not do that as a life choice. Not that not anyone who wants to do it, wonderful. There may be great benefits, but for me, that's a real challenge. For me, it's very penitential.
Yep.
So, I would say to think about cheese. So, have you tried a fondue? I think fondues can be a lot of fun. There's a lot of protein in the cheeses. They're tricky. And you could lead yourself down a very bad path because you could put a lot of work into it and the whole thing not bind properly, and it's annoying. So you definitely want to do a little homework if you're going to go the fondue route. But that can be nice. Between the bread and the vegetables, can be a lot of fun and tasty. Seafood, of course, I think is a great way to go. And these days,
I do the salmon and the shrimp. I don't do other fish really.
Yeah, but like honestly, every now and then you see like weird sales for like a lobster tail.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, where did that come from? Like $5.99. Like that.
That's true. That's
You know,
true.
just the weird sales for that sort of stuff, where you can do some of those things rather nicely, you know, and cook up. The other thing is, like, you can make different sort of, you know, tarts. So one of my favorites is a mushroom tart.
Now we're getting closer here. Yeah.
So a mushroom tart.
The seafood, I don't. It's so,
I know.
It's just
I
so
know.
complicated.
It's seafood.
And I like halibut, I like grouper.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, it's so expensive.
To me, that's fish. Seafood is shellfish.
Well, sure, but it's really expensive.
I know it can be, but so, like I say, sometimes you find these sales.
And since I use your credit card to buy these things,
So this is a matter of, you know, like in these individual crocks, you begin with a little butter on the bottom. These sliced button mushrooms.
oh, I remember we used to make those. I forgot about those.
Salt, pepper, and then a little bit of potato slices
Mm-hmm.
in between, and
like
then
puff
another
pastry or
layer
something,
with
right?
a little bit of butter, salt, and pepper, and then you put a crust on the top.
Oh, puff pastry.
I didn't use pie; I would just make the crust, and don't be afraid about making crust. It's really easy. So you can roll out your own crust. You can make a nice crust.
I might have enough
put it
courage
in.
for that.
That's a lot of fun. Soups, butternut squash bisque with blue cheese or gorgonzola is spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't cut your own butternut.
I'm making a mushroom bisque tonight, but
A mushroom bisque, yeah. So the butternut squash bisque is fantastic. So if you ever had to manhandle butternut squash, it leaves this really thick, tightened kind of film on your hand. So either use gloves
I
or
don't think
buy
I've ever
already cut.
manhandled butternut squash.
Well,
I've never been that angry with my squash.
oh, let me tell you, and be careful because those things are so hard, even with a sharp knife.
Yeah, that's true. That's
you can
true.
lose a finger. So
Well, can y'all tell that it's Friday and I'm really hungry for
right,
breakfast?
exactly. But the key with the butternut is, you know, once you kind of boil it down using some broth and things like that, is after you've done pureeing and getting it seasoned the way you want, you add some blue cheese or gorgonzola. There is something about that combination.
Yeah.
And don't hesitate. If the butternut squash isn't sweet enough, you know, put a little sugar or equal in there.
I'm not afraid.
Get it to where you want it to be.
I'm not afraid.
Also, the other thing I would say is Asian.
No, I love Asian. It's just the problem with Asian. We've been here before. Remember we went with the Thai route for a while?
Yeah, that was fussy.
And we bought a whole pantry full
Of Thai food, Thai ingredients.
because you have to have a whole list of things. And it was good. But I have found you can do a nice pad Thai without having that many ingredients and
Well, that's good.
Even a couple little curries.
I made a ramen once, which was interesting because I was in like this sort of foodie kind of recipe thing. And you know the noodles they recommended me to use?
What?
The cheap ramen noodle.
Seriously?
Yeah, they said throw away the flavor pack. They said in America, it is your best ramen noodle.
Okay.
All right. But do you know how hard it was to make that broth? To make a homemade ramen broth?
Really?
It's quite a process. You don't realize it, but there's a lot of solid food behind that broth.
I bet there is.
You just throw away the solids.
You just throw away the sides, yeah.
And
as in any good stock, really.
yes.
Yeah.
But when you do it, it's a spectacular flavor.
Interesting.
Spectacular.
Okay. Well, I'll look into that.
So, I mean, ramen be kind of fun. You know, I know you've done the frittata thing in the past.
I have, yep.
So I don't know if you're engaging that.
I need to look at the French as well. I'm not sure if you've ever made a cassoulet before.
No.
Probably the hardest thing I've ever made in my life.
Is that right?
It's like 3 days worth of work.
Oh, wow. That's a little much.
I made it for Christmas or something, but it was super, super hard.
Really?
Not complicated. It's just time
a lot of
consuming.
process.
But maybe look at the French too.
other
Thank
thing
you
is-
for that. I appreciate that.
No problem. And I've also been making some egg custards, kind of desserty, you know, little sugar in there. And
Nah, it's not me.
they're steamed. And,
Once it gets to sugar, I'm not there.
oh, this is delicious.
You know me, I don't like sweets, but
Yeah, there's amazing things you can do with the egg.
sheared eggs are good. You ever had sheared eggs?
Yes,
that's
you
right.
taught me that method.
That's fantastic.
Well, I think this was both of our before we goes because
Yeah,
it wasn't just you.
we're gonna shut this off now and keep talking about food. God
All
bless
right.
y'all.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye bye.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftop.podcast.com. tanbooks.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time
From the rooftop.